Well, it's official. The Acolyte is canceled. And whether you want to say that no, it just wasn't continued, or that the contract wasn't renewed, that tax purposes came into play, or that there were creative differences...
How else can I say it? You're being let go, your department's being downsized, you're part of an outplacement. We're going in a different direction, we're not picking up your option, take your pick. I got more.
The fact of the matter is that the Acolyte is not going to continue on. And so, in 10 years' time, when we have a look back at the Acolyte, it really will have a massive uphill battle to undergo in order for it to really be remembered and become part of our modern myth. That it will actually stand in any way in comparison to or a part of the greater Star Wars mythos. But all of that aside, let's actually have a look at what we as authors can learn from this debacle, because there are definitely lessons that we can pull out from this. So rather than just simply tearing into the Acolyte yet again and gloating over its premature downfall, let's actually be mature about this and talk about the real things that you novice authors out there should learn from this in order to prevent yourselves from falling into similar traps.
Should have seen that coming.
Hi there everyone, Lars here from Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers. Because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends, and together it lets you and I go down this road of things that you should look out for in concerns to what happened with the Acolyte. And one of the very first things that we should talk about, and something that not many people are discussing, especially those who want the show to come back, is that Leslie Headland and company do not own the Acolyte. It's been signed over to Lucasfilm and to Disney proper, and since Disney owns Lucasfilm, the higher-ups get to have the final say on whatever happens. This is something to keep an eye out for if you are a storyteller. Depending on who you pitch your story to, you might be giving up the rights to your baby. This is especially true when you go into Hollywood. Hollywood wants to control lock, stock, and barrel every story that comes across their front door. However, if you are going into traditional publishing, what you are signing away when you sign the contract, though, you want to make sure that you read that contract thoroughly and have a lawyer present no matter what contract you're working with. You're normally just saying to a company, I'm giving you the rights to publish my book, and no one else, not even me, can create independent copies that will be sold. Any sales will be going through you, because you're the one who is footing the bill for the grander production. Therefore, you get the lion's share of the production of all the profits. However, I, as the author, because I am giving you license to print my property, you as the author control the story. No one can take that away from you unless you sign it over. So congratulations to everyone who does traditional publishing. That's actually a great benefit and a great protection for us novice authors, as opposed to if we went and worked over in Hollywood, where we sign away our rights to our own product. When you are in the world of publishing, you get to hold on to your stories. So that should be something that already should be of great comfort to any novice author who just wants to publish books or whatever. You are in control of that. However, again, please make sure that you are thoroughly reading and comprehending any contract that comes before you sign it, because there might be something hidden in there that could take advantage of you. Most large publishing companies will not do that because they have their reputations on the line. They don't want to throw that away. So most often, publishing houses will not try to backstab you, but as a good rule of thumb, always make sure you're checking your contract. When we look at the Acolytes, it's owned by Lucasfilm, which again is owned by Disney. And because Disney is not doing so hot, no matter what any pixie dusters would like to say, the stock is down, even if it has recently gone up a little bit, but the stock market fluctuates. Disney's not doing very hot. They don't have many people going to their parks right at the moment. They've made horrible financial decisions, and despite the fact that Inside Out 2 and Deadpool and the Wolverine have brought in amazing money, billions of dollars, Disney only gets half of that. And that money is quickly being eaten up by other projects, which are most likely not going to do very well. So Disney does not have an extra $180 million to throw at a season 2 for The Acolyte, especially when The Acolyte has not brought in any money whatsoever and is one of their poorest performing Star Wars properties. And so, keeping in line with the thought of contracts, this is also something to keep in mind as you are creating your own stories, and if you're lucky enough to land a good deal, a good contract with a publishing company. If your story does not sell well and you are contracted to create a trilogy, there's a very good chance that the publishing company might say, hey, look, buddy, we're really glad that we could do work with you, and thank you for all the hard work that you've put into your story. However, it didn't sell well. We hoped it would do well. We had firm confidence in what you could do. But for whatever reason, or we have the list of reasons here, your story just isn't selling well. Now then, we would love to continue doing business with you, but maybe a trilogy isn't really in the works right here. Now, we are contracted with you to publish 2 other books. Either we can cut our losses here and we can go our separate ways amicably, or you can write 2 other stories for us in order to fill out that contract. What would you like to do? Let's work this out so that way we can all benefit from this. That is the professional way that most publishing houses will go. However, in some cases, they might just say, hey, look, we really don't like your story. It didn't do well. It's like The Acolyte. Therefore, we're just going to terminate this right now, or we're not going to actually publish anything else that you have, and we're going to wait for the terms and agreements to lapse, so that way we can walk away from this contract and none of us are penalized for breaking any of our legal agreements. Is that okay? Okay, we're going to ghost you for the next 3 years. So you too, as an author, even as a published author with a contract and everything, are still susceptible to what happens within the market. If your story isn't making any money for the publishing company is not beholden to you. They have a business to run. They've got people to pay, mouths to feed, and they had hoped that your story would be the one that would put money into their pockets and food in their mouths and take care of their families. If you can't deliver with a book right up front, even though you and they had hopes that it would go that way, that it would work on out, that is when you need to take a step back and you'll have to reconfigure your plans and figure out what you're going to do. And no one really wants to be in a situation like that, and hopefully you never are. But that is a reality that you might face. And when said realities come, you can't be like the Acolyte showrunners and hide away somewhere or stick your heads in the sand, go la 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 la, nothing's wrong here, everything's just fine. It's you guys who are the problem. You can't do that, because the market is what the market is, money is money, and the contract needs to be adhered to. And since I've just brought it up about how the Acolyte showrunners have acted, let's quickly talk about how their behavior did not do their project any favors, and what you as an author can learn in regards to projecting yourself, as well as advertising your own story and connecting with your audience. First and foremost, you need to know who your audience is. And when we look at the advertising for the Acolyte, they were saying, we want to appeal to the broader Star Wars fan base. However, it became very clear towards the end of the series that they had a specific group within the Star Wars fan base in mind, that they wanted to go for the thirsty shippers. Now, while there are plenty of shippers within the Star Wars fan base, they are just a group, a smaller group within the larger whole. And what they should have been doing is they should have been trying to appeal to the vast majority of Star Wars fans. When they pitched, we are going to do a murder mystery, somewhat political thriller within the Star Wars universe, that actually sounds super cool. And if you say, yeah, and we're going to have some other groups that are going to interpret the Force differently, and you're going to see different aspects and sides of the universe, and we're going to delve a little bit darker, there's a lot of people who would actually love to see that. So the advertising at face value looked really good, but the moment that you went just below the thinnest veneer of the surface, it became really clear, really quick, especially if you watched the first episode of the show, that the entire premise and all of the advertising was burned up in the first 5 minutes. And from that time on, the show was something completely different. As a result, we were all lied to. So what do you need to then do as an author when you are advertising yourself and advertising your stories? Well, first of all, again, know who your audience is and immediately start making appeals to them. Tailor what you're saying to the people that you actually want to attract. And if you want to attract a larger audience, then you need to actually deliver on that with your stories. So for instance, let's actually take one of my stories. I actually have my own upcoming murder mystery book that I hope to have published by the end of this year. Haha! And that book is a little bit niche because it's murder mystery. Not everyone's interested in a murder mystery story, but I also want to combine murder mystery with high fantasy, which you don't see all that often. It makes some people be like, ooh, why are you combining magic with a murder mystery? I don't like this. I like having good, solid facts. So me then, as the author, I have to say, this is a murder mystery with magical elements to it. If you like a good thriller, if you like a good mystery, a good whodunit, this story is going to be for you. Granted, there are some magical elements to it. It's all part of the world building and the unique way that I want to take Murder in the Rue Morgue and not flip it on its head, but take it in a slightly different direction. That's what I'm doing here with this story. Now then, if that doesn't sound exactly like your cup of tea, I absolutely understand, but I hope that you'll give it a chance, because this is unique. You might have already read Murder in the Rue Morgue and know how this thing goes. However, because I'm taking it into a slightly different direction, and especially with the magical elements, you will not know what is going to happen, and it's going to be a thrill ride for you, and it's a ride that I hope you will go on. Now then, compare what I've just said right there to we are going to redress moments of history within the Star Wars community and within the Star Wars canon. If you don't like this, then don't watch it. It isn't made for you. We don't want any bigots here. When you start using language like that, and I am boiling down a lot of what was said leading up to the release of the Acolyte and during its release as well, yeah, that's not going to win people over. That's going to kind of turn them off. I was trying to strike a very positive invitation and say, look, even if this might seem a little bit strange to you, I think you're really going to enjoy it. Just give it a try. That was not what was pitched to most people once the Acolyte really got up and running. So you want to make sure that you are that you are being positive, that you are positively inviting people. You want your specific audience, and if you want a larger audience, you have to coax them in, saying there are some things that you are going to really enjoy from this story. It might not necessarily be what you're expecting, especially if you're trying to give them something new. But if, let's say, you're going with a tried and true, look, I'm just going to give you guys a hot, steamy romance because I know that's what you're after, then tell people that. Tell people that you're doing a hot and heavy romance. Or if you're writing a great action story, let them know, oh, we got so much action, so much violence, and the characters, you're just going to absolutely love them. The banter is perfect as they're battling each other. Stuff like that. Draw people in by being positive, extolling the virtues, and never downplaying your audience, never putting them down, never saying, well, they're a little bit weird, but I, as the creator, I know what I'm talking about. That kind of language is going to get you into hot water really fast. So again, for a review, and I'm going to keep on hitting this, know your audience, be positive with your messaging, don't put anyone down, don't be negative. Don't say that other people are stupid. Please do not do that when you are advertising your own story. Be honest with people about what you're going to deliver to them. Doesn't mean you have to tell them everything that's in your story, but you want to say, look, you're going to experience this, this, and this, and these are some of the things that are in my story, and I really think you're going to like it, and I hope that you give it a try, because if you do, you're really, really going to have a good time. Advertising like that is good. And yes, you want to appeal to as many people as possible, but by knowing your audience, you should then know the kinds of things that you want to hit in order to really excite the base, the people who are desperate for this particular genre or for this particular type of story. That is what you got to do. And unfortunately with the Acolyte, we didn't get any of that. And I know I've brought this up before, but another major lesson that we need to absolutely take to heart is this, that a good story concept does not a great story make. A great story is created in the writing process, which comes about from you creating a rough draft and then putting that rough draft through multiple edits with feedback from beta readers, from outsiders who are going to be honest with you, and then you need to take their criticism. You need to know what is wrong with your story, and then you need to have the courage to apply the suggestions and criticism to your story in an inventive way. Doesn't mean that you kowtow to what everyone is telling you that you should do, but you need to know what is wrong or what is weak with your story, so that way then in your own creative way that complements your vision, you can take that criticism, apply it to your story, and do something new that surprises your critics and then makes the story better. When it comes to the Acolyte, it is very clear, based on everything that Leslie Headland and company have said, that they were in an echo chamber. They were only talking to each other and talking about what made their story so great. It was about me, the author, me, my experience, how I can subject my vision, my identity, my personality onto this story. Which, here's the thing, if it is a truly original story, maybe that's actually not a bad thing. That could be really insightful and really fun. But nowhere in any of those conversations did they ever talk about any of the proper editing that went into fixing any of their mistakes. In fact, from interviews, they act as though the rough draft was perfect, that it just needed a few additions here and there, and then it was just fine and dandy. Whereas the entire script is riddled with horrible conversations, just bad dialogue to its very core, so many contradictions that this story should not stand its own, and these characters have almost no personality, with the exception of Smilo Ren and Master Soul, who are completely abused by the end of the show. Sorry. I know I said that I wouldn't tear off into a rant and completely tear this down, but it's silly. It's absolutely silly. Please make sure that you are getting proper reviews and critique for your story, that you're making go through multiple edits, read the dialogue out loud to make sure that it actually functions, that it sounds natural, and apply the critique to your story in inventive ways to make it better. Develop a thick skin. You can do it. And if that means that you need to slowly introduce yourself to harsher criticism by slowly broadening your group and bringing more people in, then that's absolutely fine. No one's asking you to resurrect Siskel and Ebert, bring their show on back, and have them then tear you apart, and then say, okay then, so now what are you going to do? You don't need to do that. In fact, that can actually be very destructive to your own confidence in yourself as a writer. But you do need to learn how to take criticism. You do need to learn how to develop a thick skin against it, especially when people are just throwing random unhelpful stuff at you. There was definitely a lot of very unhelpful criticism of the Acolyte, and while it definitely deserved a lot of the roasting that it got, roasting is fun, but it isn't necessarily productive. People needed to give better feedback and critique before and during the show in order to help the showrunners actually become better creators, as well as supporting other authors out there. Now then, it's very clear that the showrunners think that what they did was absolutely awesome and they're not taking any kind of criticism, and that is not the attitude that you as an author should have. Finally, the last big lesson that I would take away from everything that's happened with the Acolyte is this. You are going to suffer defeats throughout your career as a storyteller. It's going to happen. How you deal with it is absolutely up to you. And if you rage at the world, if you come up with excuses, you're not going to learn from this experience. And also, you're not going to gain really a whole lot of support. People don't like a whiner or a complainer. Now then, there are definitely going to be things that are going to be outside of your control. And you know, it's okay in private to rage at some of that stuff, but when you are in public, you want to thank people for the interest that they gave to your story. You want to thank those who were very supportive, and you also want to thank those who offered good feedback and criticism, and make a promise that you're going to try your best to do something really good, and that you hope that next time people are going to be along for the ride, because you want to show people what you can really do. Again, be positive. And it might be difficult. It might seem like you're forcing the positivity, and sometimes maybe you are, but learning how to accept defeat gracefully, learning from that defeat, that is going to be absolutely monumental in gaining people's respect and having a good, healthy, positive outlook on yourself and on your own work, and having the excitement to tackle your next story, to show that you are better than just one or two mistakes. Because believe you me, you are better than your mistakes. You are a testament to your own strength and creativity, that you can persevere, that you can become the best author that you possibly can be, and that you can make your stories the best that they can be. That is what defeat can really teach us, but only if we have the right attitude. And unfortunately, I just don't see that from the Acolytes. And maybe there's really one more lesson I need to throw on out here, because there's going to be those who say, well, the Acolyte should never have existed. And I disagree with that, even though I did not like the Acolytes. Everyone who is a storyteller deserves a chance to tell their stories, because they need to do it, and their stories need someone to tell them. And believe it or not, whether for good or for bad, the world needs their stories. Sometimes to learn, yeah, maybe you shouldn't do this. Like, for instance, I just came across a manga that's beautifully illustrated and everything, but oh my gosh, the content is just awful. And no, I'm not going to recommend it or tell you what the title is, but I'll just tell you this. It's about a cafe that caters to people's fetishes, and it is so disturbing. And the thing is this, I'm never going to pick that up and read it again, because it was just absolutely awful, and I'm not going to recommend it to anyone. Yet, I'm not going to say that the mangaka should never have done this, or that the world doesn't need it, because if anything, this goes to show that while this might be to someone an interesting concept, and it can be drawn very beautifully, there are just some stories that should not be told. And you can only sometimes realize what those are by them actually coming into being. So that way people would say, that exists, and I'm going to move on to something better now. We can learn from other people's mistakes. And when I look at the Acolyte, yeah, sure, it's very easy to say that the Acolyte is a practice and everything that you should not do when it comes to creating a story or running a show. Absolutely. But that's just a very negative way of saying it sucks and we're going to move on. Instead, if you're going to take that kind of approach, then you say, okay, then we're going to get elbows deep into this grease, and we're going to pull out every good nugget of information that can be used to help other people move on, so that way they do not replicate the failures of Star Wars' The Acolyte. So, in conclusion, The Acolyte is canceled. It's probably not going to stand the test of time. Hopefully we do remember in 10 years' time to come back and have a look at it, but as of this moment right now, it's done. And there are lessons that should be learned from this. While this might seem very discouraging to new authors, like, oh my gosh, is there any way that I can do something fun and creative, either within someone else's sandbox of pre-made stories, or that I can go ahead and I can do my own thing and trust that there's any sort of success? Well, being an author is difficult. It's riddled with all kinds of pitfalls and mistakes you're going to make along the way, but it is indeed doable. And just because one show failed doesn't mean that you are going to fail either. Instead, this is an adventure with friends where you are trying to become your best self, trying to become the best author that you can be, making your story the best it can be. Because once again, you need your stories. Your stories need you. And whether or not you believe it right now, the world does need your stories. And hopefully your stories will one day be far more positive, far more influential, and far more successful than The Acolyte has unfortunately been. So that being said, y'all, if you're looking for any more insights, writing advice, analyses, reviews, and the likes, please check out our other videos here. And if you want to read a fun space story as opposed to what the Acolyte was, then you can check out my book, Monarch Mercenaries Autonomy. Link for it is in the description below. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us on this fun adventure that we call writing, even if sometimes we gotta pump the brakes, rubberneck a little bit, and be like, whoa, what the heck was that right there? Oh, believe you me, we are going to be doing that a whole lot for Season 2 for the Rings of Power. But until that disaster drops, tschüss.